Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 75, taking place on LinkedIn Audio, featuring Sheila Darcey and Tipi, two amazing leaders and outspoken advocates in the Web3 space. Thank you for joining, Sheila, Tipi. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having us. We're doing great. It's been an incredible, just been an incredible year already, and this week has been super productive. But I'm just glad to be here. It feels nice to be on LinkedIn. I have to say, TP and I are, and you and I have spoken many times over on Clubhouse and on Twitter, and it's good to be in a new environment this time around.
Most definitely. Tipi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been a beautiful day, actually. I had a wonderful chat earlier today with a professor that's an Indigenous professor, and she's writing a book on cryptocurrencies and traditional Indigenous currencies, and wanted to know my experience in now 30 plus months of Web3. So, yeah, my day started in a very kind of grounding way. I think most of us can appreciate, especially in a conversation about, our mental health and how we find ourselves fitting in culturally or, even personally, the dynamics here. So, yeah, it's been a good start to the day and looking forward to seeing where this conversation takes us.
Amazing. That sounds like quite a good line of research, and I'm sure you could be a wealth of knowledge for that person looking into that. So that's really cool. I've heard some interesting use cases in the space of Indigenous sovereignty and rights, and really economic sovereignty for Indigenous communities and crypto. So hopefully that was a fruitful conversation, and maybe we'll hear more about it as we go. But yes, thank you so much, Sheila and TP, for joining. As we mentioned, so today we're really looking at the topic of navigating the ever-evolving social media landscape in the space of Web3 specifically, and how it might impact both positively and negatively the creator or the collector, or really anybody in the Web3 space who jumps onto Twitter or Instagram. I think more so Twitter, but we're going to get into this whole conversation because I think each platform kind of has its certain appeal, and even in the Web3 space, I think has different types of Web3 natives, as it were, or Web3 users, I should say, kind of on their platforms. So that's one side that we definitely want to look at, and hopefully open up some eyes to what's happening in the Web3 space on social media platforms in general, and kind of how they're changing a little bit, especially this year, right, with Twitter trying to transform into X, or having transformed into X. And then we've got Threads now with Instagram, and Instagram is a very visual platform, but for whatever reason, it hasn't been super NFT or Web3 friendly from my experience, at least. So I think that'll be an interesting conversation as well. But aside from that, I think the other important piece of this is really prioritizing self-care in Web3, and really how even on social media, especially, there can be a lot of negativity, right? Whether it's, security-wise, just being aware that pretty much nobody hitting you in your DMs is actually helping you or wanting to, help you make money in any way. So you got to be very, on top of that, and be aware of certain, bad actors kind of reaching out with, scams, basically. And then on the other side, there's just FOMO. There's a lot of pressure, and even from projects that you love, people that you might, consider friends, but ultimately maybe you're not in the budget, you're not in the space to be able to budget for certain NFTs that you might want, and that might make you feel a certain kind of way, right? And I say this as a collector, but I think even from the creator standpoint, being able to sell your NFTs, feeling that kind of pressure, there can be those kind of negative sentiments in the Web3 space broadly, and specifically on social media. And then there's follower counts and metrics and all of that can often lead to a lot of maybe undue criticism or stress for people. But let's get into it. We'll see how it goes. But really just want to look at the mental health side of it, trying to be happy and healthy in Web3, but also looking at the tool of social media, and especially this year, how it's evolved and changed, and how we're able to make use of it while doing it in a happy and healthy way. So with that, I think we have no one better than both TP and Sheila here to kind of speak on this. So Sheila Darcey and TP have both been on the Web3 Warriors podcast in the past. We had some great interviews. Definitely go check those out if you haven't listened to them already. Sheila, you have your really cool healing coin, which we definitely want to talk about and learn a little bit about how you're using NFTs to kind of advance healing through art, and really just put intentional effort into advancing healing, really, and trying to help people focus on self-care and focus on positive mental health, right? And then Tipi, the way you're fusing your indigenous culture with your amazing art, and the way that you host your rooms, and the way that you're really making an intentional effort to welcome people from every corner of the globe and be very receptive to all the different voices and make sure that everybody feels heard and spoken to, is just amazing and inspiring. So really looking forward to hearing your inputs. So with all that, thank you again for joining. Maybe we'll start with just some introductions. Please share a little bit about your background, and then, what you're working on in Web3. Maybe we'll start with Tipi, and we'll jump to Sheila, if that works. Thank you again.
Oh, I think if it's okay, I think we should start with Sheila because I kind of
Sure.
um, because there's something very specific about our relationship that with the heel coin and things that I think it might be a better segue if that's okay with Sheila. Otherwise, I'll go.
Yeah, no, of course, TP, of course, and I really am loving that we're sharing the stage together because there's so many synergies and things we're both passionate about that we're both representing here. But again, welcome everyone that's listening in. My name is Sheila Darcey. I am an innovator, artist, and author. I describe myself as someone that stands at the intersection of art, tech, and wellness. I'm passionate about all three and have found that depending on the communities and the people you speak to in all three areas, oftentimes one of those areas are things that people are intimidated by. Either they don't understand the artist landscape or creative landscape, they're intimidated by technology or social media, or they're not as familiar with the wellness space. And so my purpose and mission is not only to elevate arts and healing, but to really be a bridge amongst all three of those, that intersection of art, tech, and wellness. How I got into Web3 was really interesting because it was during the Clubhouse days. And I think many of us jumped on board. It was just right during kind of at the tail end of COVID. And people were just feeling desperate for connection. And at the time, Clubhouse blew up for that reason. And during my time at Clubhouse is when NFTs really started to make more of a impact on me specifically because I started seeing all these spaces in Clubhouse, and that's kind of how I got into NFTs. I really went in with it a curious place because I knew something was happening there, and I didn't know much about the crypto world. And then somehow I became not only a crypto enthusiast, but TP just said this earlier, which I think is really powerful. This idea of creative sovereignty. When all of us artists, collectors, creators started to navigate the NFT space, the one thing that we all felt was this hope towards this creative sovereignty, the getting rid of the gatekeepers and connecting with other artists and creators and collectors and having a direct connection to the people that are collecting your work and are vibing with the energy of your work. And so that's really the main reason I even got into NFTs. And since then, it's really become such a huge platform in terms of the way my art has expanded and my creative community has expanded. So I'll stop there. And TP, I'm curious to hear how this will bridge to your intro.
Thanks, Sheila.
Oh, did you want to say something first, David?
No, you're good. I love it. I love that arts, tech, and wellness. I like to think that I focus on the intersection of art, tech, and culture. But I love that wellness is, in there. That's an amazing cross section. TP, please take it away.
Okay, well, I see that I don't know very many people here. I'm completely. This is like
It's a whole new
I was
world,
saying in
TP.
this.
It's a whole new world.
Oh, yes, I've been on LinkedIn forever, but I felt like I was like unearthing a fossil or something when we've been here for a long time. We've been very involved in a lot of different kinds of tech and social media. So this is a perfect opportunity to segue to how we find ourselves kind of coming into new spaces. It's a good indicator for what somebody brand new might even feel trying to figure out cryptocurrencies and stuff, and NFT artists. So my name is Clarina, aka TP, and I am OG Cree Anishinaabe. You can say Anishinaabe Kwe is the female gender identifier. I am an environmental science graduate, focused on traditional environmental knowledge of Indigenous communities, oral histories, um, and I've also had a IRL shop. I haven't put that in my bio here, so but it was called Bornham in Manitoba here, with Cree syllabics and a teepee outside. Um, and it was an artist co-op. And the store was called Our Children's Land, which was recognizing artists and supporting artists and community. So I came into the space of Web3. My daughter brought me in actually to Clubhouse, and I was looking at ESGs, trying to find meaningful ways to bring change and continue my advocacy in diversity and sustainability. And I actually started a little club called the Creators Co-op because there's some of us that have a lot of social anxiety and coming into like even right now I'm about to like run out of oxygen. We get social anxiety and it's hard to be kind of standing up for yourself in a space and wanting to represent, especially marginalized community members, anybody with different levels of social interaction and neurodiversity, or ESL, English as a second language. So there's a lot that's coming, and people, I think, spend more time trying to figure out how they don't fit in rather than just kind of embracing it. So that's been a challenge for me to switch that dialogue for myself and allow others the time that they need to kind of get up and speak. So the audio app has been incredible. And one of the most significant things is that the Web3 space is comprised of many different facets, but the artist community has been massive. One of the biggest experiences in my life in healing socially. And so it's just been incredible to connect. And Sheila was one of those people where you give, to me, it was the equivalent of a sharing circle. And I've described all the audio experiences like this one where we're all equal members around the sharing circle in equal measure. And so we're all contributing to the conversation, whether we're speaking or we're not. And so Sheila had some spaces as well in Clubhouse where there was just an advocacy for it, listening to each other and share some experiences and heal through our art journey. And so that's allowed me to feel supported and to support others. And so I've continued here for 30 plus months. And yeah, I think that's my intro.
Can I just
Amazing.
say one thing about TP though, because she's being a little humble and thank you for the flowers, TP. But one of the things that Clarina is so impressive, she's impressive in many ways, but I've never met anyone in the Web3 space that had the appetite and the energy to host so many spaces globally. I mean, she did it across continents, across time zones. I think you invested, I don't even want to know how many hours you were, not only in Clubhouse, but on Twitter. But even though you didn't speak the language in which you were hosting these spaces for NFT artists, you were able to cross the culture because you were so passionate about allowing people to be seen. And that in and of itself is one of the biggest mental health issues in Web3. And also the one thing that we were trying to solve is people were struggling to be seen in the traditional art world. And for the first time, there was a new channel, a new avenue called Web3 or NFTs that allowed you not only to be seen, but to be elevated in a way that as TP said, made you feel like you were equal. It didn't matter if you were established artist. It didn't matter if you were just starting out and you were an emerging artist. You were getting access to so many incredible people. You know, you had Keith Grossman, the founder of Time, not founder, CEO of Time, joining us in spaces. We had, traditional Sotheby's joining us in sessions. And I think that was why the NFT, I don't even know how you describe that period of time. It was definitely very potent, but that was the incredible nature of NFTs, in my opinion, is the coming together of people in such a concentrated, intense way that made you feel equal to everyone. And that's a rare thing to experience in I don't care if it was digital or in real life. That doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much, Sheila. And I agree fully. I've said this before. I've told you, TP, and like you're an inspiration for me as a fellow Manitoban, as somebody who did take that global approach, like Sheila just said. With this show and Web3 Warriors, I've been going out of my way, or not even out of my way. It's not hard to do, really, because there's so many creators from all the different corners of the world. But I've definitely been trying to make an effort to make sure that I'm representing different continents, different corners of the world, and it's been exciting, to be able to reach out and speak to somebody in the Philippines about, how Web3 games changed their life, or an artist in India about, how selling 3D art is changing his life. Shout out Jagar down there, or artists in Ghana and Nigeria. It's just, it's definitely a huge part of it. And TP, your conversations early on Clubhouse, which I can fairly say is the genesis of this whole conversation. It is a social media app itself, is where it kind of brought in the social audio push, you could say. And a lot of us kind of started in NFTs from those early days of Clubhouse, early 2021 or late 2020. And yeah, ETP, those rooms that you had were definitely an inspiration for me. Helped me just get the courage to speak initially. And then I started working with the Dream Conduit and working with other artists that were trying to do exactly like Sheila just said, take advantage of this equalizer, right? And that's what NFTs can be. And that's what the blockchain can be, really, is a great equalizer, and making things a lot more accessible and giving opportunities to artists and creators who didn't have, those opportunities prior. So definitely, I love that you hit on that, Sheila, and thank you both for your amazing intros. I see we got a few more people in the crowd now. So what's up, Jagar, Amy, McCool, Brooke, David, Thomas, Stacy, William, Safine, and Dilek. Thank you for joining us so much. This is Web3 Warriors. We are weekly podcast of Web3 Warriors. I'm the host, David Karoma, go by Chrome in the metaverse, and we like to talk with builders and creators in the Web3 space from any walk of creativity, any background, really. We talk to devs, we talk to 3D builders, we talk to artists, 2D artists, traditional artists, anyone who's enjoying their time in Web3 and building in Web3 and in NFTs. So today we are looking at the topic of social media and self-care in Web3, and specifically navigating the ever-evolving social media, but also making sure that you're taking the time for self-care and taking the time to consider your mental health and consider that you're happy with whatever it is you're doing, so happiness matters. So with all that, thank you again for these intros. First question I really have on the topic of social media, maybe we'll start with you, Sheila. How have you found just navigating social media in general in the Web3 space? And were you really active on social media prior to NFTs?
Yeah, 100% I was active. It's interesting. I'm mostly known lately as the founder of Sketch Poetic, which is also my methodology of daily sketching to process my emotions and using it as a healing tool. So when I started my Instagram, it was really to hold myself accountable to do it on a daily basis. I had no idea that my Instagram account would become not only the platform for connection, but would become the point of inspiration for so many others to join the community of arts and healing. So yeah, for me, social media has been an incredible channel for community and connection. The thing about social media, and this is touching on the mental health part of what we're talking about, I think understanding the intention of why you use a certain channel, whether that's Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, even LinkedIn, if you understand the intention of what you're trying to do and doing it from the purpose of putting something out there that you feel is important to you versus getting it from a point of validation or just using it for external purposes, I think that's where it becomes a mental health trap. For me, I'm very purpose driven, purpose led. And even when I joined the NFT Web3 space, I had to ask myself, do I want to do something else or join another community that's going to take up more of my time? And before I even said yes, I actually asked myself, how is this going to be valued in the sense of where I'm going in terms of my longer term journey, not only in my healing work, but also in my purpose to elevate arts and healing. And I saw a direction in NFTs that would allow me to do that, which is one of the reasons I even started to invest so much time in Clubhouse. I mean, I was spending hours, like 8 to 10 hours a day at some point, I remember, and it was pretty intense, but I don't regret any of it now. So I think for me, social media is a great tool, a great way to connect, but definitely a lot of pitfalls. Certainly as an artist, it can be a pitfall if you are using it, again, as a form of validation rather than a point of expression. But if you are using it for impact and creating an expansion of your mission, I think it's a great tool. I mean, it's where the audiences are, and it's where people are, and that's one of my biggest recommendations is why start something that you're alienating an entire population. And for me, arts and healing, I have to reach to the younger generations, and they're all on TikTok and they're all on Instagram. So I have to be here if in order for me to connect with that community.
I love it. I'm hearing a lot of intentionality in your social media usage, and I like that validation versus expression. That's good contrast there. TP, same question to you. You know, how are you finding navigating social media in Web3, and specifically, you know, were you kind of as active prior to NFTs and Web3 on social media?
Well, the answer is no. I was not active at all. I wasn't on. Actually, I left. I had, excuse me, been on Facebook a little bit, and then I found it really unhealthy. Hang on one second. I just have to grab some water.
No problem, no problem. Stay hydrated for sure. And yes, I agree with Facebook being unhealthy. You know, I'm still on there begrudgingly for you know, political banter, but it's not the healthiest place for sure. Take your time, get yourself some H2O.
I'm good.
All right.
Sorry, I had that long conversation. For those that weren't here yet, I was doing an interview with a doctor, an Indigenous PhD holder on Indigenous traditional currencies and Web3 and cryptocurrencies. So that was like a 3 hour conversation. So I seem to be a little bit dry. Yeah, my experience with social media though was very little. I found it really unhealthy for me. I think I don't know, I didn't know much about it. I am a very yeah, person that's really pushing through my own personal traumas and things since childhood as Indigenous person in Canada. There's still a lot of things that are happening here for us, and just kind of coping. So social media can be quite a beast when you're dealing with large impacts, especially social justice impacts that are a very real experience, and quite a lot of negativity about that and judgment. So I left Facebook, and then I came into Web3, and it was basically just being able to communicate. And I think the one thing that I would say that was different for me was very specifically, and I said this to you, David, when we were talking on your podcast. I'm primarily supported by international people, the same people that maybe have been judgmental of me and my positions of social justice are still probably very North American based, and I don't get the same amount of support and advocacy. For whatever reason, I don't want to get into analysis of that because that's just an example of something that would bring us down. So, my experience with social media is really been empowering. I felt culturally enriched by the space. I felt exposed to new perspectives internationally, and what that did was it aided me to pull myself out of the very cyclical thinking that I had of my own personal impact, and reliving the experiences of impact as a Indigenous woman in Canada. So, you know, connecting internationally with beautiful cultures of art, also exposure to a lot of the same issues that other women and other people are feeling, and the way that they're sharing those experiences through their art expression. Really allowed me to feel like I was in a group of people that I could trust, and really feel a strong thread of connection. So I felt a little bit more supported, or a lot more supported, enough so that I've stayed. And I don't think I've ever experienced so much joy and support internationally as I have in Web3. And I can't describe it to anybody. I'm gonna do my best right now, but it's pretty amazing. There are other sides of that. So just to not, like, you know, it's not all nothing is unicorns and rainbows. We, again, that teaching I always refer to as my favorite teaching, is we are all walking the sharp edge of the knife between humility and pride. So it's always trying to figure that all out. But yeah, I think hopefully that answers your question.
That's amazing. It's really a lot to think about there. Thank you, TP. The sharp edge between humility and pride. I like that. A lot to take in there. So on the point about regional differences and the fact that not only were you able to reach out to people, around the globe, but you found more support from people outside of your country, outside of your province, than you were finding, from local, art collectors or buyers, within Canada. Can you maybe dive into that a little bit? Was it easy for you to find this new kind of receptive community, or like it just kind of naturally happened out of Clubhouse, and then from Clubhouse you jumped into Twitter and the community just kept growing with you? Can you just explain a little bit like how the discovery happened? Like what was it like navigating the space? Because it sounds like it was mostly a positive experience. So maybe you didn't have to try that hard, and it was just kind of the natural outpouring of creating space and welcoming all voices. How did that come about for you?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, TP, yeah. Just when it comes to that global community that you've basically built out, right? It sounds like it happened somewhat naturally, but I'm just curious, especially because you haven't found as much, good positive reception from those here in Canada, and yet you're finding so much support and admiration from, a lot of people around the globe. How did that come to be? And how easy
It's
was it?
amazing
Yeah.
because when we look at social justice, I think, okay, so when I came into Web3, I switched my name from Clarina to Tipi. And by the way, Tipi in Cree means equal. So I switched my name, and I literally didn't know one person in Web3. I wasn't connected. I'm not in a hub. I'm not in LA. I'm not in New York. I'm not in Tokyo, you know. So I'm just kind of like this little island over here. So I kind of came, I didn't kind of, I always use these little kind of filler words, but I had the experience already of being an advocate for artists, and I really felt that that was something really important to me. And I, taught kindergarten children, so I'm a caregiver teacher kind of person. And I think the experience of being in Canada with people, I think, that have that saturation within the community, they don't want to hear any more about the indigenous experience because they're living on, there's a lot to unpack there. I don't want to unpack it in this particular space. But when I went into Clubhouse and started connecting with creatives, it was really like this very strong artistic bond. And we were complete strangers, and we wanted to hear from each other. It wasn't that saturation of my local community. It wasn't the saturation of people exhausted with dealing. And this is at the time when there was massive things happening in Canada with the residential school system, and there was a lot of impact with things in the news with relation to residential schools. I don't want to get into that either, but just so you know, that was a major thing that was happening and still was. Canadian flags were at half mast for I think 7 months during 2021. So it's just something to look up. But coming into Clubhouse and speaking and meeting new artists and creatives, and coming in from the film industry as well, one of the reasons I was able I think, to be able to connect really wholly with people was because first off, I just said I never would want anybody to feel the way that I felt in the past. I've just never, it's just really the empathy part first. Like I can relate to that. And so I just would always just say my own personal feelings with, making sure there was connection. And then really realizing again that my experience is my experience. And when you listen to other people, you hear their experience, and it kind of tempers your own, I think, and kind hearts and relating to each other, and the human experience is to care, I think. So yeah, I think just being honest and wanting genuine care without it, trying to temper yourself too much. I think that was the best thing. So international understanding indigenous experiences in 90 different countries. That you don't know about that until you start actually hanging out with the people and they're telling you their stories, and you're like, wow. And you find the similarities, and yeah, some of the stereotypes we're all facing in different um, identities, right? Self identities. There was that time also with Asian hate, which was like one of the first NFTs I ever shared was from an Asian artist, and it was really like this really a massive awakening for me to really connect with the Asian community. And I felt that I had heard a lot of shares about stereotypes, especially in women, for Asian stereotypes. And for myself, as the Pocahontas, I was called Pocahontas for, for many, many years. So, it was just relating, and you kind of pull yourself out of those cyclical kind of habits that we have, even when we're going through our day, So, yeah, I think really just by listening and caring for other people internationally, listening to the stories of my compatriots in the space helped me to grow and make sure that we were doing better for each other.
Awesome. Wow. It's inspiring. Very cool. And it's interesting that you're both are coming from different angles, right? So Sheila's had a very concerted kind of social media presence prior to NFTs, especially on Instagram, and very intentional about why she was using the platforms. And, TP, much like myself, actually, I was using Twitter a little bit for political banter, back in university days, but I was at around maybe 500 followers or something. And then with Clubhouse and blowing up, within like 6 months, I was up at like 1,400 or something, just because of tapping in with different NFT communities and Web3 communities. So definitely, I think Web3 pushed me to be more kind of active on social media. But I had a bit of a presence prior, but it's really cool, TP, that you really, it seems like had very rewarding experiences speaking with this global community, and that you've kind of been pushed along because of those experiences, and you're still active in the space and active pushing forward because of that. So that's really cool. Sheila, I wanted to speak to your community efforts as well, because similarly, hosting a lot of really positive spaces, genuine spaces, welcoming spaces for people, right? And then you've incorporated the Heal coin as well, which I think TP and I are both proud holders of. And so it's a really cool initiative, and how you've kind of incorporated a Web3 element, being the NFT, the Heal coin, with the community that you are connecting with in different ways, right? Whether it's in a Twitter space, whether it's on a podcast like mine, just how are you kind of navigating that, and anything you can share about, why you chose to kind of incorporate an NFT and how it plays into kind of what you're doing in social media. If you want to share a bit about that.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the Heal coin, because for me, it is innovative in and of itself, from a perspective of the intention behind it, but also what I hope it represents in the future. When in TP and you and in David, we all kind of were in this space of exploration and jumping from platform to platform, and really being curious about the technology. But one of the things I observed early on in the NFT journey was that people were minting their artwork, obviously their music, their whether it was an animated, uh, 3D art, or visual imagery. What I was noticing is that the blockchain is really representing this timeless, definitive timestamp of something that you've minted on the blockchain that will live forever. And when I was thinking through that, I thought, why did I mint my intention on the blockchain? I mean, clearly that has been the theme of my entire presence here already. But I said, why don't I mint my intention? And my intention is to elevate art as a tool for healing. And in the process of doing that, I minted, I worked with a designer to work on a Heal coin NFT, and I minted it on OpenSea. And at the time, gas fees were super high. I do want to share this part of it because it's kind of, relevant in terms of the investment I made, but the importance of why I thought it was important is, when I minted the NFT, the gas fees were anywhere from $50 to $100. So for those of you listening that don't know how NFTs work, but when you mint something on the blockchain, you have to pay a transaction fee, which was called gas at the time. And so I had minted 111 Heal coins, and I gifted them to my collectors, but I also gifted them to people who I felt were creating impact in the topic of healing, mental health, or any sort of advocacy that was driving around those topics. And Clarina was one of the first people that received it. David, you hosting and giving spotlight to so many of us in the space advocating for mental health. And when I mentioned my intention, I said the value of this coin will rise when the collective rises. And that's really my mantra in life. I actually have an upcoming art show that I'm really excited to be announcing soon, and it's part of my exhibit. I'm bringing in the Healing Collective because for me, it's not enough for me to rise as an artist that has profoundly been impacted by the healing practice of it, but also the importance that you as the receiver of art can also be healed if you intentionally connect with it with that purpose. And so, as part of my upcoming show, I am not only going to be doing my art and performative piece, but there will be a whole wellness activation with 16 practitioners that will be a part of it. So, yeah, really, the HealCoin NFT was my way of just minting my intention on the blockchain. And as part of that, I was also paralleling what I call my weekly arts and healing spaces, which is the thing that TP was talking about earlier. And she used the words caring and what was the other word that you used that I loved? But basically, the whole purpose, storytelling. Like all of us, David, you're doing it now. Storytelling is a huge part of why these audio apps are so successful and are giving people the opportunity to connect. Because as artists, we've often struggled with how we tell stories of our work and who we are. And I know, TP, you were talking about social anxiety earlier, but I genuinely used to hate talking in public, whether it was an audio app or in front of an audience. I mean, I worked in an agency for a very long time, and I would almost like want to throw up before a pitch because I would get so anxious. And that a lot of that anxiety came from wanting so desperately to connect with the audience to the point where I got in my head and not in my heart. And so what I think the Clubhouse did and Twitter did and NFTs did, because in NFTs, most of us, I'd say 90% of us connected in the digital world before we connected in the physical world. And so we just got more and more comfortable talking about our stories, sharing our stories. And if there was one thread across all of the different communities I've jumped within NFTs and Web3, it is that storytelling aspect that has connected us all, and your ability to succinctly tell people what you stand for and what you're about and why your art matters. It's really helping educate a lot of new up and coming artists to be able to be advocates for themselves. Because if you can't advocate for yourself, it's really hard to ask others to advocate for you. So I think that's been the biggest benefit of NFTs and Web3 is that ability to tell stories.
Awesome. And advocate for yourself and others, right? It's been incredibly rewarding as a collector primarily, just to be able to collect art and then speak with the person you collected art from and have them tell you, how meaningful it is that you just bought art from them, and then have an ongoing connection with them into the future, and continue to support them. I mean, I think it's just a whole new ball game, and that's what we're here for sure. And I love how you mentioned, connecting in the digital world before, the real world, really. And yeah, definitely that's the case. And we're here sitting in the digital world still. I remember in the early days of the metaverse conversation, some would make the point like, we're sitting here in Clubhouse, we're in the metaverse right now, and it wasn't wrong, right? It's like we're kind of it's all one big digital space. And so that is the good part of social media, I think. And that's been coming through from both of you. Sheila,
yeah, I just wanted to say that, I was just wanting to say for the people that are listening, David, TP, and I have never met in the physical world. And that says a lot. I mean, and yet I don't feel any less connected or less, just less connected than I would if I met you at a conference or at an event. That's the potency of this platform, because we are connecting. And I also think it's also the way we show up in the space. We're very heart-led, and we believe that art matters in the sense of a social impact, which is what TP's really been focusing on. There's this huge social impact in what all that connects us three, and what we're doing and why we're here. It's never wavered, even with the crypto winter, and the communities are slowly dissipating with that. And I'm sure we'll touch on that topic because it has taken a mental health toll on artists right now. But yeah, no, I definitely think that's been a huge part of my presence here, is connecting with people like you and TP.
1000%. They need the 100s on this app so I can throw them up. But definitely agree with you, and it is amazing, and it'll only become even more of an impactful relationship when we do meet in real life. But it's definitely not any diminished based on, the contacts and the conversations we've been able to have so far in this digital world. So on that point, let's move into a little bit of the less rosy side of, the Web3 space and social media specifically. How are you, each of you, kind of prioritizing self-care in Web3? And then how does that, impact how you navigate social media? I know that's a big question. Whichever wants to take it first. Sheila, should we go to you first? So how are you prioritizing self-care in Web3? And then how does that impact
Sure.
your movements in
I'm
social
actually
media?
happy to talk about this one because I use it as a hack, a brain hack, a heart hack, a spirit hack. There will be times, and this is also on my Instagram, whether it's Twitter, where I'm on social media and I ask myself, why am I here? And if the answer is any less than serving the greater good or serving the purpose and mission of my work, and or not driving my internal compass, I take a break. I genuinely have done that many times over, whether it's a week. I've never taken really longer than 2 weeks, because the good news is once I am conscious of something, I tend to bounce back pretty quickly on aligning. I have this mantra of I want my full alignment of my mind, body, and spirit at all times. And whenever one of them is misaligned, I just call myself on it. And social media is one of the biggest triggers for that. There will be times when I'm posting a piece of art, and if at any moment I can call myself out and say, are you doing this to get the likes or to be consistent on the platform? I have to check myself, because that was never the reason I even posted my art in the first place. And the same thing on Twitter. I used to host weekly arts and healing spaces. And Tipi, I'm sure you can relate to this, but I was hosting them on a weekly basis, and they would last anywhere from 3 to 6 hours because people would just really engage. But I did that for almost 2 years. And it got to a point where, I don't think I was ever fully resentful, but I got to the point where it was like, wow, I'm taking up a lot of space, hosting these spaces, a lot of time hosting these spaces. And I was feeling exhausted, and I knew it was taking a toll on my mental health. So I had to stop doing them on a weekly basis, and I started doing them more intermittently. And lately I haven't done them in a long time, but I still engage in spaces. It's just not the ones that I host. So I guess the short answer to that question is I use social media as my own mental health check. And ironically, is when the social media triggers me, I know it's time to pause. But I do get so much out of it because I am so intentional with the use of it.
Amazing. Great advice there. I think, take the time to step back and say, why am I doing this? Am I doing it just to say that I'm doing it, or is it really rewarding me intrinsically, right? TP, same question. How are you prioritizing self-care in Web3, and how does that kind of impact your navigating in social media?
Well, I'd like to remind everybody that I had like 50 followers in my entirety of my social media history. And currently on Twitter, I have almost, I'm at 14,600 plus. And that's just crazy to me. Like, that's just massive. So there's a lot that goes on. I think my biggest impact would be the feeling that I owe something to people that I've never met, and that I have to follow people that I don't know, and that I feel guilty that I don't know them, and that I should get to know them. And then I'm trying to figure out whether or not, when I'm conveying a message of true genuine kind of wanting to connect, that there's all kinds of vernacular I don't understand about social media, like engagement farming things. And I'm like, one of the things that I often do is just kind of make fun of the things I don't know. Like, I made a tweet yesterday, like, I don't know a lot of things. I don't know. I don't know much about a lot of things, but I know a lot about a few things. So it's just like the silliness factor, that just creates a bit of levity for me, and just kind of being really down to earth. So that's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of kind of responsibility. You feel like you can't say too much. You have to say, it's just a lot. Like, there's just self-policing. Um, and you have to vet your own kind of content to make sure you're not sharing too much personal information that you never know people. Like, make a lot of us, there's like this whole kind of assumption I think, wasn't it Gary Vee made a post about assumption, this, I can't remember how he phrased it, but this idea that we make all these assumptions by people. So the whole cancel culture thing is something I'm terrified of. It's like I don't want anybody to be mad at me in real life. Um, and I don't want anybody to be mad at me in meta life either. I don't I don't like anger is something that I've always hid from as my first response and as a child survivor of trauma. So angry people upset me and I just tend to run away. So you have to be careful with social media. Like I think it's really, especially with tech that people don't understand. You're accountable to it. Um, and so I have to say I'm very fortunate. I think by being really kind of a carer type person, people don't usually come at me too badly. I have, I think, like only a handful of experiences where I've had to kind of go, oh, I'm not quite sure. I've never blocked. I think I blocked 3 people, and I think they were bots. So I don't, I don't know. I think I'm probably pretty fortunate. I see and hear a lot in social media where people are experiencing very negative things. I remember the very beginning when I first started Clubhouse and I was sharing stuff on Instagram. I had put just a picture of me, like it's just me. This is me as a human, and immediately got a whole bunch of weird kind of sexual content and DMs, and I was like, oh. So I just turned all that off. I just said nobody, unless you're part of my network and I follow you and you follow me back. I just turned it off. I'm not there to build. Like I just wanted to stay connected and advocate for the artists that I know, and so people just DM me directly and you make that handshake. Twitter is different. It is filled with a lot of people I don't know. I don't understand it all. Um, and so there's a lot to try to unpack there for somebody that's new to social media. I don't know anything, and that's an organic building. I haven't used an app. I don't understand. I've never looked at an algorithm. To me, I'd probably look at 1,000 other things before I would look at that. I don't know what that means. And that doesn't mean to discredit anybody else. Again, that's not my intention ever. Just my own experience is that it's not something that I'm interested in. Um, yeah, so I think there's a sense of responsibility that's a bit different for me that I never had before with only 50 followers, which is like my mom and my family, kids I grew up with, and some business people I went to university with, and things like that. So it's a bit different to be surrounded by strangers and supported by strangers and feel a sense of accountability to them. Um, so yeah, hopefully that answers a little bit. There is more in like experience that I would love to speak to about social justice, and I was, but we can like segue to that after.
For sure. No, I think you raised a lot of good points there. Especially that point about protecting your energy, like the way you just like shut it down. You got creeps in your DMs, you just shut the whole thing down. You got to do what you got to do to protect your energy for sure. And on the block point, I had never blocked anybody before NFTs, but now I am so quick with that block. Like if you like tag me in any random airdrop, like you're blocked, period. Like I don't even think twice anymore because I just assume they're bots, and if they're not, then oh well, that's okay. Don't tag me in random airdrop stuff because it's just so sketchy. There's a lot of security. And then you also raised that point on the fact that you're dealing in technologies that a lot of people don't know about, so you actually feel accountable and responsible to actually make sure you're giving good information for one, and most importantly not giving risky information, right? Unsecure information, like don't click links, don't follow random promotions about XYZ NFT going to the moon or whatever the case might be. So those are good points as well, for sure. So thanks for sharing that. I want to speak to the pressures, and definitely you can probably tie in the social justice angle on this possibly as well, TP. But looking at like you were saying, Sheila, as well, that right now it's a little bit more difficult, especially I think on the creator side of things, trying to sell. We've had some quote unquote big names in the NFT space that have either stopped selling or have just like reduced their prices, and they're communities have, become a lot quieter. So on one hand, you have pressure to sell. On another hand, you've got metrics, you've got pressure to get follows. And I think you both have kind of spoken to that. TP doesn't care about the algorithm. Sheila doesn't want to be there, just to like look good and get new followers, right? She wants to have a real kind of reason to be there. So there's that kind of pressure on a lot of people, which it sounds like you both have navigated really well. And then there's the pressure from a collector standpoint that I was talking about earlier, the FOMO, the like, do I need to buy this NFT? Like, I don't want to be left out, So I don't know how you navigate those pressures. And I'd love to hear just, how it works for you. I mean, I'm kind of from a collector standpoint, but I think you both have amazing NFTs on the blockchain and artistic creations. So as a creator, how do you navigate those pressures? But then also just, from a metrics standpoint, there are a lot of people out there. I think our stage here is not as concerned with metrics, but metrics pay the bills for some people, right? So I think that's always a balancing act. And for those who genuinely rely on social media to pay the bills and have income, I think it may be a little bit of a different way to navigate these pressures. But speaking to these pressures, maybe Sheila, and then we'll go to TP. How are you feeling about it? And do you have any other kind of advice as far as, where the focus should be and how to deal with all the different pressures that exist in Web3 social media?
God, this is a loaded, that's a loaded question and topic. I'll just take a slice of it because it can be pretty complex. I'm going to start with answering why I'm still here, right? Because I guarantee you that many of us, and I say many of us, TP, you, David, there are a number of us that we just recognize we're all here, even though we may not be selling as many NFTs, or we may not be collecting as many NFTs, we may not be hosting as many spaces around these things. What got me here is what still keeps me here. And it truly is the people, the ability to connect with other artists and creators and collectors and other people creating impact. But what also got me here was the technology. When I said I stand at the intersection of art, tech, and wellness, I genuinely find tech curious. With the rise of AI and the rise of all these conversations around human and technology intersecting more and more, to the point where there's a lot of fear around what does that look like in the future. And I'm going to just talk about fear for a second, because fear drives so much behavior in the real world, and certainly in the social and digital world. If you go into these spaces with fear in mind, whether it's the lack of, the fear of lacking of a collector collecting your work, or the lack of worthiness of your own work, or just the lack of, if you constantly go into it with a place of fear, then you're going to I feel like you're going to attract that type of energy. And I have noticed that many times over lately, because a lot of people have abandoned NFTs for viable reasons, and I understand that. A lot of artists really did come to this platform with so much hope that this would be different. And sadly, and let's just call it what it is, there's many things that we were hoping to change that is starting to become the way the systems used to be, right? The gatekeepers, this idea that you have to be able to, be able to be really vocal about who you are and navigate politically, how to be seen. And those are the things that we were hoping to break in the systems of art and as well as the systems of technology and social. But at the same time, the reason I still have hope for this space is that technology is constantly evolving, and there's always going to be bad players that come here and try to take advantage and just make money from it and then abandon the space. But those are the people that you will find in the real world, right? People that just come and use the platform or use your energy and use your intention and just, abuse it. But what I have noticed for me is I tend to not have negative experiences in the Web3 space, because the communities I've connected to are truly heart-led. And we're all trying to create impact in the world. We're all passionate about the environment. We're all passionate about this idea of we versus me. And so I think, and this is only one last part of the social media question you asked earlier, David, that I will say, I feel social media mirrors what it is we focus on in the world. So I notice that in my Instagram feed, in my Twitter, even LinkedIn, the people that I'm connected to are the people that I want to see a reflection of in myself, whether they're inspiring or whether they're driven by something bigger than themselves, or they have something important to say. They aren't caught up in the things that that seem so superficial. Therefore, my experience is that way on social. The things that I see in my social feed are very inspiring. And yeah, I haven't had to block many people. I think I've only blocked 2 people for that reason. So I do a really good job of curating my experience on social for that reason. But it's always been very heart led for me.
Amazing. Well, you're lucky, and maybe I'm getting a little too trigger happy with the blocking, but Tipi, your thoughts on, and when I say pressures, maybe you frame that more accurately, Sheila, because it is kind of fear, right? It's thinking about how other people are perceiving what you're doing or not doing, you know, what you're selling or not selling, who's following you, all that kind of stuff. And I think maybe this speaks to how you're acting online as well. And, you know, as someone who's very kind of outspoken when it comes to social justice myself, and political, you know, perspectives that I have, I definitely can see how that has its own risks as well. But Tipi, you know, looking at this issue of perception, I guess, you know, how are you navigating it? Are you very much kind of similar to Sheila, you know, just refuse to kind of engage with the fear and focus on, you know, the intentional, you know, more valuable interactions?
I'm trying to hide from animals that are chasing me around to let.
Oh, wow.
The kitty cat is
Hope it's
following
not
me
a
in here.
wolf.
There's a bunny that's eating this cardboard box in the living room. So,
Oh, okay.
okay, I'm like, okay, beasties. Okay, so I'm going to share a story very quickly, because I think it's kind of it really speaks to what we are capable of when we open up the dialogue and we keep the communication lines open. So I was sharing some experiences in Clubhouse, and my lifelong experience, and Sheila's probably heard this story before, um, but my lifelong experience was that I was afraid of this certain time of day for my entire life up until I went to Clubhouse and started talking to artists. And it was this dusk period because when I was a young person, it was the time when people started to drink, and it was this time as a child that things got scary. And so it got really, really, it was just always, even like my whole adult life, have children, but every time it got around 5 o'clock, I'd start to feel really sad and really, really, it was a light. It was this hue of light. It was this time of day. And I was talking in a small group with friends that I connected with. They were literally from everywhere around the world. It was like maybe, you know, people from India, people from Iran, people from Afghanistan, Korea, and United States, Barcelona. Like just like incredible for like 10 people. You could have like this huge stretch. Anyways, we were chatting, and I was sharing that experience, and it was amazing. They said, just go into the light, just follow the light, don't hide from the light, just embrace the light. And it sounds like go into the light, like it's not bad. It's embracing it. It's like seizing that, and and not walking away from it, or turning, allowing it to dominate anymore. So I just look at that all the time with my experience of social media and interaction. It's like I didn't come from that before. I didn't have that support before. And it's changed. When I say it's changed my life, it really has, because I actually haven't had that feeling. It took about maybe like 8 months for that feeling to go away, but I actually kept the connections happening. And so the time that I spent connecting with people was actually healing me, like in a very physical, neurological way. And not only for me, because I've talked about the importance for me as an Indigenous person, and for me that believes in our genetic experience and our trauma experiences. I also say in equal measure that our joy is the genetic experience. And so for me, it was a responsibility to heal from myself, for my children, as well, and convey that healing to them. And so social media has been a very different experience with that. And it's been through the arts community, but also the advocacy for understanding and learning new technologies, new currencies, and new ways of thinking, being innovative and active in not only looking at the hindrances of our experience, but looking at how we're going to be activists for change in our experience has been a lot, and a very important part of the journey. I do a lot of research, with lots of focus on sustainability and regulations, and I don't look at my the regulations in my country that I'm existing in. I look at how are all the different regulations happening internationally for me to understand what we're doing here. So one of the things again that I talked about at the very beginning was that I came into the Web3 space really exploring ESGs, which is really being, to me, you had the opportunity to look at some technology as or you could have shares and voter rights, or you could start and support new ventures, and so without any focus on measuring their value, you could sign up or participate and use your voice to be an advocate for change as an insider activist. So I came into the space really being an insider activist in technology and different aspects of things, and then became, it's like the indigenous the indigenous teachings that I have from my family are Medewan teachings, very kind of orthodox teachings that are, I guess, are considered red path is the terminology that's more often used. People understand that one more. Um, Very kind of everything is cyclical, right? And so I look at social media at that same moment as that story that I just shared about embracing the light and not to turn away from it and incorporate it into my artwork and incorporate it into my life. So the social media experience is part of that. It's on the wheel. It's on my medicine wheel as part of my interaction and my growth experience. And to go to the social justice aspect, I think the negative. So everything is, I'm an optimistic person. Clearly, I have to spin things. It's my survival mechanism. In truth, to be an optimist. And maybe I wouldn't have survived. Some of my siblings didn't make it. So maybe it was inherently part of me. But the experience for social justice and activism in Web3 and social media is a challenge, because I was literally in a space where we were talking about this yesterday, and I was trying to make a point about muting, and you can mute people. People don't want to see things, and I'm not saying anybody actually has ever muted me. I wouldn't know, nor would I really give that any time or energy. I'm just saying, when we are people of color or people of culture, a very specific ethnic origin, and we speak out, quite often we're muted. Like to go full circle back to my point earlier of an oversaturation. Community doesn't want to necessarily hear about the indigenous perspective. They just want to talk about art. They want to talk about bonding curves, and they want to talk about CCO, and they want to talk about royalties. They don't want to hear about the social justice aspects. So you don't necessarily get supported, and it's to your own detriment, but you have a voice. And so for me, it's been really important to really stay my course. I'm not going to waver in being the genuine person I have to be and the advocacy that I have to be. And that means sometimes where people had come in from the Clubhouse space, where I had been really active in Twitter advocating for other NFT artists, and I already had a very high following. They surpassed me because they really are they're not kind of beating, quite literally, the drum of social justice. So yeah, there is impact with that, um, but I have reach, and I still continue to try to figure out how I can help be an advocate for all the areas that I think need care and attention. So hopefully that makes some sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and thanks for working that segue into social media, because that definitely, I love that angle, and I think that the sustainability has been a recurring theme kind of in our conversations and with you as well, Sheila, and I think going back to having a purpose, right? Having a purpose behind your actions in Web3 and seeing the value in the technology, right? The fact that we see it in real life, or maybe not in real life, in digital life, which is quickly becoming synonymous with real life. But we see like the impact happening, right? So whether it's Kofi in Ghana being able to build a school from selling his 3D African masks on the blockchain, or, you know, whether it's just advancing certain cultural awareness, right? Through different works of art and different things. So definitely, I think social justice and making a real social impact through Web3 and through NFTs is definitely part of what's keeping me going. And I think it's a big part of those who are still kind of active in the space, see that the impact at the very least is helping the artists who are minting their art on the blockchain. But even more impressively is the network effect and the way that it's really creating community, it's changing narratives, it's advancing sustainability, it's in some cases even improving supply line issues. So there's all kinds of different ways that blockchain is kind of integrating into actually helping society and helping create more opportunities for people. So Sheila, did you want to speak on social justice or sustainability specifically?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Actually, I'm going to trust my intuition, because as you were talking, something did come up that I wanted to raise, and it is connected to everything we've been talking about. Is, you know, when many of us joined the space and we were curious about the technology, I know this is going to sound like a curveball to bring up, but one of the biggest wounds that I had to work through in my healing journey is my relationship with money. You know, my entire life, I have seen money used as power, used as ways to suppress people, used as a way to manipulate. So I had a very negative connection to money, and therefore I rejected the bad of money, but I also rejected the good. And I'm going to go back to the early days of NFTs. And for those of you that were not part of it, it was really hard to explain the intensity of it. And the thing that I observed in the early days of NFTs was, for the first time, a lot of artists, and I say this definitively, and I know I was one of those people, we got a lot of financial literacy out of being in the NFT space, because for the first time, people not only were talking about the transaction and the commerce aspect of art in a way that had never really been discussed, but the other part of it is, in the crypto world, everything is transparent, and that cannot be understated. Every person that has a crypto wallet, you can track every single transaction. So even if you're a scammer or somebody that is a bad player, if you do your homework and you do your research, that data and that information is out there. So for someone like me that always kind of rejected money, I was forced to really confront my relationship with it. And as part of that, and this is really where I'm going with the social impact, is as I've been healing my own personal relationship with money and really embracing it, so that money doesn't just come in and out of my world, but I'm able to generate wealth from it because I feel worthy of it. I'm noticing that my presence in the space has shifted. And what I mean by that is, I don't get caught up or swayed by the circles. And I know there's tons of echo chambers in the digital world, but I'm not in the circles where people are making millions and millions of dollars on art right now through NFTs or crypto, because that's just not the circles I'm running in. Because I have a feeling, if I were, my entire, I'm sure I'd be triggered, but two, I think that my mental health would suffer, because I would see like, wow, why am I not making all this money like this other artist is making, because they're being backed by these collectors. And I know that's always at play in the community, because I hear it and I see it, and I'm not affected by it, because again, my entire purpose and mission is arts and healing. I can't walk the walk. I mean, I can't talk the talk unless I walk the walk. And so for me, it matters to me that I have to keep myself honest in the reasons that why I'm able to say what I say and do what I do. And money has been a huge aspect of why NFTs have not only been successful, but also have been, people use the word scam sometimes associated with NFTs, because in the real world, that's kind of what money does, right? You can have money, use money for good, or you can use money for bad. And again, it depends on the circles you run. I just happen to run in the circles that are trying to use money for good, whether it's minting NFTs to support, the fires in Hawaii, or funding, an artist that's struggling with cancer and helping buy their art so they can help pay their bills. Those are the things that I see in my feed that continue to give me hope about the space, because there's very few other channels that you can act on somebody's like social good in a way that directly hits their wallet right away. Like, you have such transparency and such direct connection to that. that is why I think this is such a powerful technology. And certainly we're very early in the stages of Web3. And even that term has been kind of, we don't even know what Web3 is really. But yeah, I just want to say that that's been the biggest reason why I'm so inspired by being here is the transparency of it all. It's so transparent to the point where you really can't hide a lot if you're looking.
Yeah, 1000%, peer to peer for the win. Yeah, being able to make new friends with, people I've collected art from direct, by buying the art right from their wallet. They get the funds right away. They often reach out on Twitter or, wherever and thank me. And then, we have a relationship into the future, and it's an awesome artist that I can now call a friend in many cases. And that's just a whole new world, I think. And to your point about other initiatives, yeah, whether it's the forest fires in Hawaii, when there was all kinds of things happening in Turkey. I remember there was a friend of ours looking to kind of use the blockchain to raise awareness about that. And when Nigeria had, big protests back in 2021, I remember recently after Afrodroids came out, Owo put out a whole, kind of socially minded kind of concept of art around it, trying to raise awareness about what's happening in Nigeria as well. So yeah, I mean, it's just the impacts are boundless. And like you said, we're still early. And, on that Web3 note, it's funny, there's a lot of obfuscation and a lot of kind of competing narratives about what Web3 is. But, I think that Web3 is just the marriage of blockchain and the internet, and really everything you just described about that power of peer-to-peer technology, people being able to actually have their own sovereign wallet on the internet that can receive money and send money to support others and to make transactions online. Like, that's everything. So I don't think we've passed Web3 until the Web3 wallets are as ubiquitous as Twitter is today. The same way social media is so ubiquitous everywhere, I believe that Web3 wallets and crypto eventually is going to get there, because the internet needs that value, and now it has it, and it's just a matter of people actually realizing that there is this new layer of value and economic opportunity on the internet through the blockchain and through crypto. So that's what Web3 is all about from my perspective, but I do know there are some competing narratives out there.
I love your narrative, by the way. I've
Oh,
never
yeah.
heard anyone describe Web3 in that way, and I can co-sign that version.
I love it. Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Tipi, did you want to touch on anything as far as the financial sovereignty, which is a very important point that Sheila brought up, or anything else around social justice or sustainability?
And how? Okay, I wanted to, because you remember I said I had mentioned ESGs. Um, and so that was like one person and one voice and one vote can change something, right? We all want that. We all are trying to recognize that. But imagine when you put that in the hands of creatives. So a lot of people haven't actually kind of drawn the pulled all the points together. But the reality is, if I was, say I was, which I am, came into this space really kind of wanting to be an insider activist, understanding how we can have shares in a business or a venture. And this is not crypto advocacy. This is just what business advocacy, right? So we have businesses that we all rely on that are part of our network in our daily life. And then you can have shares and accountability to change that sense of what are they doing that's accountable. So ESGs was a way to measure diversity in employment, whether or not they were using green options and different things, right? So there was just different measurements that you could do. And so for me in Web3, all of a sudden, I come in and people are speaking about building again, that venture idea, right? And then they're talking and sharing ideas of how that would look as far as royalties, how that would look as far as different multi chains, how that would look as far as kind of what your offsets are, what are our resources, what are our regulations, what is security, what is our vulnerabilities, what are our strengths, what needs to change, what's the future look like, what's the differences, right? So a lot of like analysis of what we're looking at. And that to me looks exactly like the reason why I came into Web3. And now the creatives are here and they're talking about those things. There was a lot of conversation at the very beginning where, the difference between understanding concepts like proof of work and proof of stake were big concerns. People were using different hashtags, and I never supported any of the hashtags, like the terminology. And I'm an environmental science graduate, and Indigenous vegan, and a tree planter of 10 years. I never supported the use of the term clean NFTs. I never did, because it implied that there were dirty ones. And I was like, that's not building. That is separatism. And so I thought it wasn't the way to build sustainability. And to me, sustainability isn't necessarily that just to focus on green. It is like, how are we inclusive? Are we building within our international regulations? Are we supporting artists? Are we supporting, again, at the very beginning of those Clubhouse days, I was really looking at diverse media, and that was important to me, because in the film industry, and I said this then and I'll say it again to make my point, to understand what Web3 isn't just creatives. When you work in the film industry, there's there's production and post production. There are people that are cooking, there are people that are in accounting. There are people that are, running everything, all the tech, all the audio, all the actors, all the lighting, the grips. There's so much happening, you know. And every single one of those people is a creative or a creative style that's putting into a certain area of their expertise. Um, and so all of those aspects of how we create and how we're connected to each other is a really incredible network. And Web3 is all of those people. So somebody that's very incredible at marketing, or very incredible at, advocacy, or speaking up for the things and representing the things that need to be changed. I think that's what Web3 allowed us to kind of just go, this is what we're building. We're building it from the inside out. And a lot of us are insider activists without even knowing that they are, because anytime you see a tweet out there, so about anybody saying anything about their royalties, they're continuing the conversation, whether it's to the detriment or not. That's their prerogative. It's not whether or not, as long as people are talking about it, and wanting to see some change, they're validating the existence of the need for it to be there. So to me, that's what sustainability is. It's like when we create things we are responsive and accountable to what we're trying to see, and take all impacts into account.
Amazing. I love that accountability is a recurring theme here, and it's great. Okay, well, we're slowly getting close to this 90-minute mark. I want to respect my guest's time. I thank you so much for joining. I do have quite a few questions here. I want to ask you a little bit about the social audio angle of it, because as I mentioned early on, we kind of are all from the 2021 class of Clubhouse, and, kind of halfway through 2021, that splintered onto Twitter, and we have Twitter Spaces. Just curious, how are you both feeling about social audio apps in general? And now, of course, we're sitting here on LinkedIn, and they're doing their own version of social audio apps as well, which so far, it's been pretty cool. Definitely reaching out to new audiences, which I appreciate. And thank you everyone who's joined us here. So quickly, maybe we'll start with Sheila and then Tipi. Thoughts on social audio in general? And, are you still, partial to Twitter, or are you on Clubhouse at all? Any new favorite? Just thoughts on social audio, because it kind of brought us all together, right? Sheila, then Tipi.
Yeah, I'm still a fan of social audio, obviously, or else we wouldn't be here. But I do still miss the certain feature sets that Clubhouse had, where everyone could be on stage. There were no limits, as long as you're a good facilitator and you're able to, invite people to speak and be able to hold a space in a way that made people feel comfortable speaking up and sharing their stories. So from that perspective, I miss Clubhouse. Obviously, Twitter is still a space I will go in, because that's where a lot of the community moved to. And I don't know, in terms of longer term, how it will transform with Elon being at the helm of X now, and what he's doing with the monetization of content through the audio app. I think that's been a big shift. I'm not one of those people that are going to be taking on that new kind of direction, but I do think there's something to be said about people getting compensated and certainly supported using this any sort of audio platform to reach a broader audience. Obviously, there's good and bad in that. But yeah, personally, I go where the audience is to reach the message I'm trying to reach. But there's another aspect of this that I know TP will smile at, because I can't help but say it, because I when I say the word healing, it's a very loaded word. But when I think about my art and how it's helped me heal, I often say that the marks that I make on paper has a certain resonance, a certain energy, a certain sound. And the thing that audio apps have taught me, and this is the thing that I will always appreciate about Clubhouse, is I didn't see people's faces. I didn't read their body language. I couldn't see their face. All I could hear was their voice, their inflection, the way they sounded. And honestly, there's very little to hide when it comes to your voice. And what I mean by that is, you don't have to be an eloquent speaker. You don't, if you're nervous, you're nervous. Social anxiety, we all get it. And I think there's something to be said about that, because everyone that has ever joined any audio platform, we all had that social anxiety. I remember the first few weeks of Clubhouse, I was a nervous Nelly talking about anything, and I would be so nervous talking. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. But what's really great is you do to connect with people on a very different level when you don't see them, and so you're really paying attention to their energy and the way that you're feeling when you hear them speak, and how they're connecting with you. So I think from that perspective, I think it's been really healing for me to be on these platforms, because it's really forced me to be more thoughtful on what I'm saying and how I'm saying it.
Awesome. I agree fully. And Clubhouse is still around, by the way. You're welcome to join us over there. I'm still partial.
I make it sound like it's no longer
Clubhouse,
around.
But it's okay. I'll give my Clubhouse plug every once in a while, but I know it's not a very popular opinion these days. Tipi, thoughts on social audio, and what's keeping you busy? Are you still hosting a lot of spaces, or any thoughts?
Oh gosh, no. I'm not. I do. I mean, it's different. It's different. I did regress back to being socially anxious, and I'm happy with that. I think we just have to lean into it. Like, it's fine. I know in like one of the best things is relating to people, right? So I hear people that are actors that are still anxious every single time. The difference, I think, with the audio apps is that it's the mindset we have, where I do believe we're in the circle, and I think if it's a sharing circle, and I believe everybody here is of equal significance, then it doesn't really change anything for me. Where in the past, I think it was like, this one speaker mentality. A lot of the boardrooms and the way that we had things set up was that there was always like that one power dynamic and this hierarchy. And so if you change that in your mind and you actually convey that to the space that you're in, the audio apps are really incredible. And I find the funniest thing, because part of my community is like, we always laugh. We really do laugh all the time. And you can hear that. You can hear me laugh, and I think I'm pretty consistent with. I've always laughed right away, very first off, because I think it's funny that all of a sudden I'm just talking to my phone and a whole bunch of people. So that to me is like, I'm a little bit of, amused with the whole technology behind it, even though I'm a techie kind of person. It's like, oh, there's actually these little people's faces are listening to me, and I find that funny. And I just think it's incredible. I wanted to say something about that, and it was a quote that I put on yesterday, and I was excited because I watched Woman Talking, Sheila, and I know that you had said something about that, so I watched it last night, knowing that we're going to connect. And to the point, that's the Sarah Polley film. And one thing that I thought was really beautiful was she wrote into the film when everybody was laughing. So sometimes I think people laugh as hard as they would like to cry, and I just think like that the emotion that we all experience, that is incredible. That the fact that I could relay that, you could hear me laugh, you could. I think in this conversation I have held back my tears as much as I've laughed. So it's all right there in a genuine experience, and the audio conversations and aspect of social media, I think, is an incredible way you can hear the nuances of language and origin. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Amen. Most definitely. And I will say that those that I have had the pleasure of meeting in real life from Clubhouse, it just comes through that it was real, like it's like these conversations are very real. And like you're saying about the inflection, about, you can kind of tell how genuine people are, right? And, it's for the most part, obviously, there's some people who are really good at faking it. But yeah, no, I love the social audio apps. And I think it's given us this opportunity. And I know I wouldn't have hosted a podcast. I wouldn't have all these amazing conversations with people like yourselves if I hadn't started on Clubhouse and started with the social audio app. So I'm glad that through this conversation, I think we've definitely highlighted more good than bad, which is always good. And I think that there's no doubt that social media as a tool isn't going anywhere. And when it integrates with Web3, it can be very powerful, making instant peer-to-peer connections with the people that you're buying art from. So definitely goes hand in hand. As we wind down here, I do want to give each of you an opportunity, and I'm sorry, it's okay if we go a little bit over, but to save it to the end. But I do want to highlight both of your amazing artwork. So Sheila, you've got your awesome sketch poetic kind of line of artwork, and it has a healing purpose behind it. So I'd love to give you the opportunity to speak to that. And TP as well has her TP-Fi collection, as well as some amazing photography and other artwork on the blockchain. So in closing, maybe we'll start with you, Sheila, if you just want to give a little bit of a breakdown of sketch poetic and your NFT collection, and also your book and amazing work that you've done around that brand. And then we'll go to TP as well as we shut down here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, David. I just want to say thank you again for having us. You're incredible, and always feel so seen and loved in your presence. So thank you for having us. So Sketch Poetic is my pseudonym, but also the methodology. On April 19th, 2017, I started sketching daily to address my mental health. I did it with the purpose of sketching through my emotions and giving permission of all the things that I was pushing down inside of me, whether there were emotions or trauma, and letting them be seen on paper. And in the process of that, I remember having an epiphany out loud. Actually, I said it at the coffee shop. I'm like, do people know art heals? Like, I said it with such awe and like delight. And because I come from, it's interesting that we're on LinkedIn. My entire career has been in the corporate spaces. I've been in digital agencies. I've been a tech consultant. I've been a facilitator. And my only language in the past had been business. And then suddenly I go to my art as a source of mental health. And what I didn't expect is that I would find my purpose in it. And I started helping others, doing workshops, using sketching as a way to heal. Wrote a book about it called Sketch by Sketch, A Creative Path to Emotional Healing and Transformation. And again, I minted the HealCoin NFT and trying to elevate the Healing Collective. The Healing Collective is not only artists, but also healing practitioners that use their gifts to help others heal. The art that I minted in the blockchain is pretty much spread out because I really have been coming in with a place of play and exploration, which is probably why my mental health is so good in the space, because I'm not driven. It's not driven by any desire to achieve a certain goal. It was always with the desire to be curious and play. So I'm on pretty much every platform you could think of: OpenSea, Known Origin, Foundation, Tezos, someone like Hickenunk and Object. And so you will see my art everywhere. And I did that because I wanted to explore those technologies and those platforms. But the only last thing I will plug, and this is an early kind of preview because we haven't announced it, is I am finally having my first solo show in LA. I wish TP and David, you could come. It would mean the world to me, but it's going to be called A Portal for Healing. And it is going to be a performative piece. I'm actually going to be sketching for 3 days straight, using the hands as the outline. If anybody follows me on Instagram, you'll see I use hands a lot as a container, because I believe that the hand is the meridian of the body. That's what the Chinese medicine teach us. And I have the ability to feel energy and sketch it. So I'm able to visualize what is unseen. And that is the gift that I have been given, that I'm able to use and translate it as a healing modality. So it's going to be an interesting test because that's going to be a lot of sketching for a lot of time. And I'm trying to hit 100 hands by the end of 3 days. So it's very exciting, but also a pivotal point in my art career. So I'm excited about that. It'll happen October 6th through the 8th.
October 6th. That's the day before my birthday too. I wish I could get
No
out. I
way.
wish I could get out to
Oh
Cali
man.
for that. That would be amazing.
It's
Congratulations.
gonna thank you so much. Yeah, I can't wait to announce it.
Amazing. Beautiful. Look forward to seeing it. And that does sound like a lot of work, but most importantly, you're having fun with it, right? You're doing it for creative, as a creative endeavor. So no pressure, just have fun with it. And I look forward to seeing what comes out of that. That's amazing. TP, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your TP-Fi and your photography. Anything else on the blockchain that you want to share, talk about as we wind down here?
We got some alpha from Sheila. Woohoo! As we say in the Web3
Only for you,
biz.
TP. Only for you. By the way, before you speak, TP, I'm going to tell people your artwork is truly one of my favorites in the space. Independent of knowing you and loving you the way I do, I think your art and the depth of what it represents is so powerful. Like if you haven't seen TP's TP series, it's amazing.
That's wonderful. Oh my gosh. Okay, so okay, again, I have to remind people that TP means equal. So I am TP and you're TP and you collect TPs from TP. How's that? So TP-Fi is my actually my art healing and escapist, and I always describe myself as an honest escapist. So I love science fiction, really, since I was a child, but also as I grew into adulthood and trying to define myself. I love reading sci-fi. Went to see Ursula Le Guin in a women in science fiction workshop when I was like 18. I'm Gen X, so I'm not going to get any further than that in my outing out. But yeah, I've been around and really have a lot to express. And so it's my TPs are traveling around the world on blockchain technology and going into different exhibitions. It's also going into space and trying and exploring different kinds of contexts like cyberpunk and different things. So I create with TP-Fi, which I've been exploring with tech and AI. And quite often I've started with my photography first, and I've shared a number of different kind of work in process, how I would blend two pieces of photography. I describe I was this is interesting. I describe my photography as more land based, meaning I like to look at the ground as an indigenous person. I like to look at things differently. We're observing things and trying to kind of take an assessment of what we're seeing. Maybe is different than other people, and I don't know, but that's what I do. But I've also noticed that things get very surreal in photography. I like the idea of not editing anything at all, and having the light and nuance of shadows kind of feel like it's already science fiction, especially landscape photography. It just looks incredible. Um, so I was like, I have a big mint coming up. And I'm collating all this media for an arts profile that they're doing. I'm not gonna, well, maybe I'll say because nobody will know, but this is my alpha. Sheila doesn't. I haven't told anybody this, but it's actually with Click Curate, and I've been curated by Patrick Amadon for a special event. So it's like this whole in the space. I've been, as somebody who's working in the industry, film industry, trying to figure out how to kind of output some short films. And I really wanted to do that in a way that were NFT formats. And so I want to do 4 films. But this piece that I'm doing is going to be TP-Fi, which is that science fiction generated photography with AI. I don't do any animations with AI. I always do my own kind of animations in different layer styles and effects and transitions. I've been doing audio synchronization, which is really fun. A lot of those pieces I haven't minted because it's an exploration and I just love to share art. I share a lot of science fiction quotes. Um, and so I'm doing a piece that's actually related to my love of vintage film stock. I have 1950s film. And so I'm doing a composite piece of AI film, AI, TP-Fi science fiction, and very hyper realistic 8mm film stock. So that's what I'm doing. That's the total alpha. Jen, I see you down there. You better not tell anybody. Um, but yeah, so that's coming up. Don't anybody tell anybody.
She just left. She's about to tell everyone.
Yeah, she's running. She's just, what? Congratulations. I'm like, no, don't tell anybody. I'll get into trouble. So anyways, TP5 is coming out. And I'm like, it's so exciting because there's a lot of journey there. I really like the idea of putting teepees in the context of the nuclear family of the 1950s. I think that's going to be really, really interesting. So I just love multimedia, and I just love that we have that ability, and doing that on the blockchain and being supported. I think is really powerful. So yeah, that's my alpha.
Woohoo, congratulations, Patrick Emmett. I love him. That's amazing. I can't wait to hear more about it, and I'll keep my lips tightly sealed.
Well, no, and the context of that, which I think is important, because in social media, like, there is impact for us. Like, we take it on the chin when we stand up for what we believe in, right? We have to take it on the chin, so we're a little battered, a little battle fatigue. And so this curation is very specifically related to like what did he call it? Digital disobedience. He didn't call it that, but somebody else did. And I like the idea of being digital nomads and digital disobedience. I think about a lot of my activism for Cube of Truth, where I don't say anything. I just hold up a screen and say, take a look at this. Where does this come from? As a vegan activist, I say nothing. I just hold up media that lets you have a look if you'd want to. So anyways, that's a form of digital disobedience that I partake in. So anyways.
I dig it. And you got that punk rock background too, right? So I think it plays into that. Amazing. Thank you both for sharing some amazing alpha, and congratulations to both of you. Really looking forward to seeing that. It's really, really exciting. So many amazing gems have come through this conversation, so I appreciate you. We're going to re-air it tomorrow on Twitch at the usual live times for Web3 Warriors, and it will be on all the podcast networks as episode 75 for Web3 Warriors, by Sunday. So thank you again for the conversation. I hope that the whole audience and everybody who's been able to drop in has taken some lessons out of it, some valuable insights. I want to give a thank you to Michael just jumped in, Bridget, Ebro, Sasha, Andrew, Dilek, Jagar, Amy, Brooke, Thomas. I appreciate you all so much. Mr. Andrew Cardoza is an actual Canadian senator. Thank you for hanging out with us. You let all those regulators in Ottawa know that Web3 is where it's at, and the blockchain is a good thing. We're using it to create a creator economy and really push things forward here. And so Canada has been doing some good work in the regulation space, and maybe we'll have a whole conversation here on our next LinkedIn audio panel about regulatory environments around the world and how Web3 is evolving and things are continuing to move forward. So I do appreciate everybody in the audience. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Sheila and TP. It's amazing every time we connect. I hope I can get out to LA at some point, Sheila, to connect with you out there. TP, fellow Manitoban, I love to have you on here, and I look forward to meeting in person sometime in the not too distant future. Thank you both. Any final words you want to add as we wrap?
No, just thank you. Thank you so much. And it means I have to come to you this time.
Maybe, yeah, that could be it.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. And yeah, it's fun. My first LinkedIn audio experience, some new friends. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. It's been wonderful. And thank you, David, and lovely again to see Sheila.
Thank you so much. And yeah, anybody who's not connected with TP already, definitely connect with her. She's got a lot of wealth of knowledge in this Web3 NFT space, and bringing real cultural impact as well. And we always love to connect and learn about new things and push this space forward. So thank you again, both of you. It's been amazing and a really rewarding conversation. Thank you. We'll be live on the networks by the end of the weekend. And until then, we'll be back next week talking to the founder of NFTO, Galen, which is a local NFT community out in Toronto that I connected with last week. So we're looking forward to that. And until then, we'll catch you all in the metaverse. Take care, everybody. Peace out.